NCERT Biology textbook for 12th standard, chapter number 3, Human Reproduction. As you are aware, the humans are the sexually reproducing and the viviparous. The productive events in the humans include the formation of the gametes, that is known as the gametogenesis, that is the sperm in the male and the ovum in the female, transfer of the sperm into the female genital tract, that is known as the insemination, and the fusion of the male and the female gametes known as the fertilization, leading to the formation of the zygote. This is followed by the formation and the development of the blastocyte, and its attachment to the uterine wall is known as a implantation. The embryonic development is known as a gestation, and the delivery of the baby is known as a parturition. You have learned that these reproductive events occur after the puberty. There are the remarkable differences between the reproductive events in the male and in the female. For example, the sperm formation continues even in an old man, but formation of the ovum ceases in the woman around the age of the 50 years. Let us examine the male and the female reproductive systems in the human. 3.1 is the male reproductive systems. The male reproductive system is located in the pelvic region. It includes the pair of the testes along with the accessory duct, glands, and the external genitalia. The testes are situated outside the abdominal cavity within the pouch called as a scrotum. The scrotum helps in maintaining the low temperature of the testes, 2 to 2.5 degrees centigrade lower than the normal internal body temperature, necessary for the spermatogenesis. In adult, each testis is oval in shape with a length of about the 4 to 5 cm and a width of about 2 to 3 cm. The testis is covered by the dense covering. Each testis has about 250 compartments, called as the testicular lobules. Each lobule contains the 1 to 3 highly coiled seminiferous tubules in which the sperms are produced. Each seminiferous tubule is lined on its inside by two types of the cells called as a male germ cells, that is known as spermatogonia, and the Sertoli cells. The male germ cells undergoes the meiotic division, finally leading to the sperm formation, while the Sertoli cell provides the nutrition to the germ cells. The region outside the seminiferous tubule, called as an interstitial space, contains the small blood vessels and the interstitial cells or Leydig cells. The Leydig cell synthesize and secrete the testicular hormone called as androgen. Other immunologically competent cells are also present. The male sex accessory duct includes the retitestis, vasa efferentia, epididymis, and the vasa deferens. The seminiferous tubule of the testis open into the vasa efferentia through the retitestis. The vasa efferentia leaves the testis and opens into the epididymis, located along the posterior surface of each testis. The epididymis leads to the vasa deferentia that ascends to the abdomen and the loop over the urinary bladder. It receives the duct from the seminal vesicle and opens into the urethra as an ejaculatory duct. These ducts store and transport the sperm from the testis to the outside through the urethra. The urethra originates from the urinary bladder, extended through the penis to its external opening called as a urethral meatus. The penis is a male external genitalia It is made up of the special tissues that helps in the erection of the penis to facilitate the insemination. The enlarged end of the penis, called as a glans penis, is covered by the loose folds of the skin called as a foreskin. The male accessory glands include the paired seminal vesicle, a prostate, and the pair bulbourethral glands. The secretion of these glands constitute the seminal plasma, which is rich in the fructose, calcium, and the certain enzymes. The secretion of the bulbourethral gland also helps in the lubrication of the penis. Now the 3.2, the female reproductive system. The female reproductive system consists of a pair of ovaries along with a pair of the oviduct, uterus, cervix, vagina, and the external genitalia located in the pelvic region. These parts of the system, along with the pair of the mammary glands, are the integrated structurally and functionally to support the process of the ovulation, fertilization, pregnancy, birth, and the child care. Ovaries are the primary female sex organ that produce a female gamete, ovum, and the several steroid hormones that is known as ovarian hormones. The ovaries are located one on each side of the lower abdomen. Each ovary is about 2 to 4 cm in length and is connected to the pelvic wall and uterus by the ligaments. Each ovary is covered by a thin epithelium which encloses the ovarian stroma. The stroma is divided into the two zones, the peripheral cortex and the inner medulla. The oviduct, fallopian, that is the fallopian tube, uterus, and the vagina constitute the male-female accessory duct. Each fallopian tube is about 10 to 12 cm long and extends from the periphery of each ovary to the uterus. The part closer to the ovary is the funnel shape. It is funnel shape infundibulum. The edges of the infundibulum possess the finger-like projections called as a femori, which helps in a collection of the ovum after the ovulation. The infundibulum leads to the wide part of the oviduct called as the ampulla. The last part of the oviduct, isthmus, has the narrow lumen and it joins the uterus. The uterus is a single and it is called as a womb. The shape of the uterus is like an inverted pear and it is supported by the ligaments attached through the pelvic wall. The uterus opens into the vagina through a narrow cervix. The cavity of the cervix is called as a cervical canal, which along with the vagina forms the birth canal. The wall of the uterus has 3 layers of the tissues. The external thin membranous is a perimetrium, middle thick layer of the smooth muscle is a myometrium, and the inner glandular layer called as a endometrium that lines the uterine cavity. The endometrium undergoes the cyclical changes during the menstrual cycle, while the myometrium exhibits a strong contraction during the delivery of the baby. The female external genitalia includes the mons pubis, labia majora, labia minora, hymens, and the clitoris. The mons pubis is a cushion-like fatty tissues covered by the skin and the pubic hairs. The labia majora are the fleshy fold of the tissues which extend down from the mons pubis and surround the vaginal opening. The labia minora are the pair fold of the tissues under the labia majora. The opening of the vagina is often covered partially by the membrane called as a hymen. The clitoris is the tiny finger-like structures which lies at the upper junction of the two labia minora above the urethra opening. The hymen is often torn during the first coitus, that is the intercourse. However, it can be broken by the sudden fall or a jolt insertion of the vaginal tampon. Active the participation in some sports like the horseback riding, cycling, etc. In some women, hymen persists even after the coitus. In fact, the presence or absence of the hymen is not a reliable indicator of the virginity or a sexual experience. The functional mammary gland is a characteristic of all female mammals. The mammary glands are paired structured, that is the breast, that contain the glandular tissues and the variable amount of the fats. The glandular tissue of each breast is divided into the 15 to 20 mammary lobes containing a cluster of the cells called as the alveoli. The cells of the alveoli secrete the milk which is stored in the cavities, that is known as the lumen of the alveoli. The alveoli open into the mammary tubules. The tubules of the each lobe join to form a mammary duct. The several mammary ducts join to form a wider mammary ampulla which is connected to the lactiferous duct through which the milk is sucked out. The 3.3 is the gametogenesis. The primary sex organ, the testes in the male and the ovaries in a female, produce the gametes, that is the sperm and the ovum respectively, by the process called as a gametogenesis. In testes, the immature male germ cells, that is the spermatogonia, produces the sperm by the spermatogenesis that begin at the puberty. The spermatogonia in singular form, the spermatogonium present on an inside wall of the seminiferous tubule multiply by the mitotic cell division and increase in the number. Each spermatogonium is diploid and contain the 46 chromosomes. Some of the spermatogonia, called as a primary spermatocyte, periodically undergoes the meiosis. Primary spermatocyte complete the first meiotic division, that is the reductional cell division, leading to the formation of the two equal haploid cells called as a secondary spermocytes, which have only the 23 chromosomes each. The secondary spermatocyte undergoes the second meiotic division to produce the 4 equal haploid spermatids. What would be the number of the chromosome in the spermatids? The spermatids are the transformed into the spermatozoa, means the sperm, by process called as a spermatogenesis. After spermiogenesis, the sperm head becomes embedded in the Sertoli cells and are finally released from the seminiferous tubule by the process of the spermiation. The spermatogenesis starts at the age of the puberty due to the significant increase in the secretion of the gonadotropin releasing hormone, that is the GnRH. This, if you recall, is the hypothalamic hormone. They increase the level of the GnRH, that is the gonadotropin releasing hormone, then act at a internal puberty glands and stimulate the secretion of the two gonadotropin, that is the luteinizing hormone, that is the LH, and the follicle stimulating hormone, that is the FSH. The LH, luteinizing hormone, act as the Leydig cells and stimulate the synthesis and the secretion of the androgens. The androgen in turn stimulate the process of the spermatogenesis. The FSH, means the follicle stimulating hormone, act on the Sertoli cells and stimulate the secretion of the some factors which helps in the process of the spermigenesis. Let us examine the structure of the sperm It is a microscopic structure composed of the head, neck, middle piece and a tail. The plasma membrane envelope the whole body of the sperm. The sperm head contains an elongated haploid nucleus, the internal portion of which is covered by the cap-like structures known as acrosomes. The acrosome is filled with the enzymes that help fertilization of the ovum. The middle piece possesses the numerous mitochondria which produce the energy for the movement of the tail that facilitate the sperm motility essential for the fertility. The human male ejaculates about the 200 to the 300 million sperms during the coitus, of which for the normal fertility at least the 60% sperm must have the normal shape and the size. At least the 40% of them must shows the vigorous motility. The sperm released from the seminiferous tubule are transported by the accessory duct, secretion of the epididymis, vas deferens, seminal vesicle and the prostate are essential for the maturation and the motility of the sperm. The seminal plasma along with the sperm constitute the semen. The function of the male sex accessory duct and the glands are maintained by the testicular hormone, that is the androgen. The process of the formation of the mature female gamete is called as a oogenesis, which is a markedly different from the spermatogenesis. Oogenesis is initiated during the embryonic development stage when couple of the million gametes mother cell, that is the oogonia, are formed within each fetal ovary. No more oogonia are formed and added after birth. These cells start the division and enters into the prophase first of the meiotic division and get temporarily arrested at that stage, called as a primary oocytes. Each primary oocyte then gets surrounded by the layer of the granulosa cells and is called as a primary follicle. A large number of these follicles degenerate during the phase from the birth to the puberty. Therefore, the puberty, only the 60,000 to the 80,000 primary follicles are left in each ovary. The primary follicle gets surrounded by the more layers of the granulosa cells and the new theca and are called as a secondary follicle. The secondary follicles soon transform into the tertiary follicles, which is characterized by the fluid-filled cavity called as an antrum. The theca layer is organized into the inner theca, that is the interna, and the outer theca is the externa. It is important to draw your attention that it is at this stage that the primary oocytes within the tertiary follicle grows in a size and complete its first meiotic division. It is an unequal division resulting in the formation of the large haploid secondary oocytes and the tiny first polar bodies. The secondary oocyte retains the bulk of the nutrients-rich cytoplasm of the primary oocyte. Can you think of any advantage for this? Does the first polar body born out of the first meiotic division divide further or degenerate? At present, we are not very certain about this. The tertiary follicle further change into the mature follicle or a Graafian follicle. The secondary oocyte form a new membrane called as a zona pellucida surrounding it. The Graafian follicle now rupture to release the secondary oocyte, that is the ovum, from the ovary by the process called as ovulation. Can you identify the major differences between the spermatogenesis and the oogenesis? A diagrammatic representation of the spermatogenesis and the oogenesis are given below. Now the 3.4 is the Mensure cycle. The reproductive cycle in a female primates, for example the monkey, apes and the human being, are called as a menstrual cycle. The first menstrual being at a puberty and is called as a menarche. In human female, the menstruation is repeated at an average interval of about 28 or 29 days. And the cycle of event starting from the one menstruation till the next one is called as a menstrual cycle. One ovum is released, that is the ovulation, during the middle of each menstrual cycle. Major events of the menstrual cycle are shown in the figure. The cycle starts with the menstrual phase, when the menstrual flow occurs and it lasts for the 3 to 5 days. The menstrual flow results due to the breakdown of the endometrial lining of the uterus and its blood vessels, which forms the liquid that comes out through the vagina. The menstruation only occurs if the released ovum is not fertilized. Lack of the menstruation may be indicative of the pregnancy. However, it may also be caused due to some other underlying causes like the stress, poor health, etc. The menstrual phase is followed by the follicular phase. During this phase, the primary follicle in the ovary grows to becomes the fully mature Graafian follicle, and simultaneously the endometrium of the uterus regenerates through the proliferation. These changes in the ovary and the uterus are induced by the changes in the level of the pituitary and the ovarian follicle. The secretion of the gonadotropin, that is the LH and the FSH, increases gradually during the follicular phase and stimulate the follicular development as well as the secretion of the estrogen by growing follicle. Both the LH and the FSH attain a peak level in the middle of the cycle, about the 14th day. Rapid secretion of the LH leading to the maximum level during the mid-cycle called as a LH surge induce rupture of the Graafian follicle and thereby the release of the ovum, that is known as the ovulation. The ovulation or the ovulatory phase is followed by the luteal phase, during which the remaining part of the Graafian follicle transforms as a corpus luteum. The corpus luteum secretes the large amount of the progesterone, which is essential for the maintenance of the endometrium. Such an endometrium is necessary for the implantation of the fertilized ovum. Other events of the pregnancy, and during the pregnancy all events of the menstrual cycle stop and there is no menstruation. In the absence of the fertilization, the corpus luteum degenerates, and this causes the integration of the endometrium leading to the menstruation, marking a new cycle. In human being, the menstrual cycle ceases around the 50 years of age, that is the term as the menopause. The cyclic menstruation is the indicator of the normal reproductive phase and the extends between the menarche and the menopause. The menstrual hygiene. The maintenance of the hygiene and the sanitation during the menstruation is very important. Take a bath and clean yourself regularly. Use the sanitary napkins or clean homemade pads. Change the sanitary napkins or homemade pads after every 4 to 5 hours as per the requirement. Dispose of the used sanitary napkins properly. Wrap it with used paper. Do not throw the used napkin in the drain pipe of the toilet or in the open areas. After handling the napkin, wash the hand with the soap. Now the 3.5 is the fertilization and the implantation. During copulation, that is the coitus, semen is released by the penis into the vagina, that is the insemination. The motile sperm swim rapidly and pass through the cervix, enter into the uterus and finally reach the ambulatory region of the fallopian tubes. The ovum released by the ovary is also transported to the ampulla regions where the fertilization takes place. The fertilization can only occur if the ovum and the sperm are transported simultaneously to the ambulatory region. This is the reason why not all copulations lead to the fertilization and the pregnancy. The process of the fusion of the sperm within and the ovum is called as a fertilization. During fertilization, the sperm comes in contact with the zona pellucida layer of the ovum and induces the changes in the membrane that blocks the entry of additional sperm. Thus, it ensures that only one sperm can fertilize an ovum. The secretion of the acrosome helps the sperm enters into the cytoplasm of the ovum through the zona pellucida and the plasma membrane. This induces the completion of the meiotic cell division of the secondary oocyte. The second meiotic division is also unequal and results in the formation of the second polar body and the haploid ovum, that is the oocytes. Soon the haploid nucleus and the sperm and that of the ovum fuse together to form a diploid zygote. How many chromosomes will be there in a zygote? One has to remember that the sex of the baby has been decided at this stage itself. Let us see how. As you know, the chromosomes pattern of the human female is the XX and that in a male is a XY. Therefore, all the haploid gametes, that is the ova produced by the female, have the sex chromosome X, whereas in the male gamete, that is the sperm, the sex chromosome could be either X or Y. Hence, the 50% of the sperm carry the X chromosome while the other 50% carry the Y chromosome. After fusion of the male and the female gamete, the zygote would carry either the XX or XY depending on whether the sperm carrying the X or a Y fertilized the ovum. The zygote carrying the XX would develop into the female baby and the XY would form a male. That is, you will learn about the chromosomal pattern in chapter number 5. That is why scientifically it is correct to say that the sex of the baby is determined by the father and not by the mother. The meiotic division starts as a zygotic moves through the isthmus of the oviduct called as a cleavage towards the uterus and forms the 2, 4, 8, 16 daughter cells called as the blastomere. The embryo with 8 to 16 blastomere is called as a morula. The morula continue to divide and transform into the blastocyte as it moves further into the uterus. The blastomere in the blastocyte are arranged into the outer layer called as a trophoblast and the inner group of the cell attached to the trophoblast called as the inner cell mass. The trophoblast layer then gets attached to the endometrium and the inner cell mass get differentiated as the embryo. After attachment, the uterine cell divides rapidly and covers the blastocyte. As a result, the blastocyte becomes embedded in the endometrium of the uterus. This is called as implantation and it leads to the pregnancy. Now the 3.6 is the pregnancy and the embryonic development. After implantation, the finger-like projections appear on the trophoblast called as chorionic villi, which are surrounded by the uterine tissues and the maternal bloods. The chorionic villi and the uterine tissues becomes the interdigitated with each other and jointly form the structural and the functional unit between the developing embryo, that is the fetus, and the maternal body called as a placenta. The placenta facilitates the supply of the oxygen and the nutrients to the embryo and also removes of the carbon dioxide and the excretory or a waste material produced by the embryo. Placenta is connected to the embryo through the umbilical cord, which helps in the transport of the substances to and from the embryo. Placenta also act as in the endocrine tissues and produce the several hormones like the human chorionic gonadotrophin, that is the HCG, human placental lactogen, that is the HPL, estrogen, progesterone, etc. In latter phase of the pregnancy, the hormone called as a relaxin is also secreted by the ovary. Let us remember the HCG, the HPL and the relaxin are produced in the woman only during the pregnancy. In addition, during the pregnancy, the level of the other hormones like the estrogen, progesterone, and the cortisols, prolactin, thyroxine, etc. are increased several folds in the maternal blood. Increase the production of these hormones is essential for the supporting the fetal growth, metabolic changes in the mother and the maintenance of the pregnancy. Immediately after the implantation, the inner cell mass, that is the embryo, differentiates into the outer layer called as endoderm and the inner layer called as endoderm. Outer layer called as ectoderm and the inner layer called as endoderm. A mesoderm soon appear between the ectoderm and endoderm, and these three layers give rise to the all tissues or organs in adult. It needs to mention here the inner cell mass contains the certain cells called as the stem cells, which have a potency to give rise to the tissues and the organ. What are the major features of the embryonic development at various months of the pregnancy? The human pregnancy lasts 9 months. Do you know for how many months pregnancy lasts by dogs, elephant and cats? Find out. In human being, after the 1 month of the pregnancy, the embryos is a heart is a form. The first sign of the growing fetus may be noticed by the listening to the heart sound carefully through the stethoscope. By the end of the 2nd month of the pregnancy, the fetus develops the limbs and the digits by the end of the 12 weeks, that is the first trimester. Most of the major organ systems are formed. For example, the limbs and the external genital organs are well developed. The first movement of the fetus and the appearance of the hair on the head are usually observed during the 5th month. By the end of about the 24 weeks, end of the 2nd trimester, the body is covered by the fine hairs and eyelids separate. The eyelashes are formed. By the end of the 9 months of the pregnancy, the fetus is fully developed and is ready for the delivery. Now the 3.7 is the Punctuation and the Lactation. The average duration of the human pregnancy is about the 9 months, is called as a gestation period. The vigorous concentration of the uterus at the end of the pregnancy causes the expulsion or a delivery of the fetus. This process of the delivery of the fetus, that is the childbirth, is called as a parturition. The parturition is induced by the complex neuroendocrine mechanism. The signal for the parturition originates from the fully developed fetus and the placenta, which induce the mid-uterine contraction called as a fetal ejection reflex. This triggers the release of the oxytocin from the maternal pituitary. The oxytocin acts on the uterine muscles and causes the stronger uterine contraction, which in the turn stimulate further the secretion of the oxytocin. The stimulatory reflex between the uterine contraction and the oxytocin secretion continue, resulting in the stronger and the stronger contraction. This leads to the expulsion of the baby out of the uterus through the birth canal, parturition, and soon after the infant is delivered. The placenta is also expelled out of the uterus. What do you think the doctor ejects to induce the delivery? The mammary glands, and the female undergoes the differentiation during the pregnancy and start the producing milk towards the end of the pregnancy by the process called as lactation. This helps the mother in the feeding the newborns. The milk produced during the initial few days of the lactation is called as a colostrum, which contains the several antibodies absolutely essential for the develop the resistance for the newborn babies. The breastfeeding during the initial period of the infant growth is recommended by the doctors for the bringing up the healthy babies. Now the summary of the human reproduction. Humans are the sexually reproducing and the viviparous. The male reproductive system is composed of the pair of the testes and the male sex accessories, duct and the accessory glands and the external genitalia. Each testis has about 250 compartments called as a testicular lobules, and each lobule contains the 1, 2, 3 highly coiled seminiferous tubule. Each seminiferous tubule is aligned inside the spermatogonia and the Sertoli cell. The spermatogonia undergoes the meiotic cell division leading to the sperm formation, while the Sertoli cell provides the nutrition to the dividing germ cells. The Leydig cells outside the seminiferous tubule synthesize and the secretes the testicular hormones called as androgen. The male external genitalia is called as a penis. The female reproductive system consists of the pair of the ovaries, a pair of the oviduct, a uterus and the vagina, external genitalia, and the pair of the mammary glands. The ovaries produce a female gamete, ovum, and the some steroidal hormones, that is the ovarian hormone. Ovarian follicle is a different stages of the development are embedded in the stroma. The oviduct, uterus, and the vagina are the female accessory ducts. The uterus has the 3 layers, namely the perimetrium, myometrium, and the endometrium. The female external genitalia includes the mons pubis, labia majora, labia minora, hymens, and the clitoris. The mammary glands are one of the female secondary sexual characteristic. The spermatogenesis result in the formation of the sperm that are transported by the male sex accessory ducts. A normal human sperm is composed of the head, neck, and the middle piece and the tail. The process of the formation of the mature female gametes is called as oogenesis. The reproductive cycle of the female primates is called as a Mensure Cycle. The Mensure Cycle started only after attending the sexual maturation, that is the puberty. During the ovulation, only one ovum is released per Mensure cycle. The cyclical changes in the ovary and the uterus during the Mensure cycle are induced by the changes in the level of the pituitary and the ovarian hormones. After coitus, sperm and that are transported to the junction of the isthmus and the ampulla, where the sperm fertilizes the ovum, leading to the formation of the diploid zygote. The presence of the X or the Y chromosome in the sperm determines the sex of the embryos. The zygote undergoes the repeated mitotic division to form the blastocytes, which is implanted in the uterus, resulting in the pregnancy. After 9 months of the pregnancy, the fully developed fetus is ready for the delivery. The process of the childbirth is called as a parturition, which is ready for the delivery. The process of the childbirth is called as a parturition, which is induced by the complex neuroendocrine mechanism involving the cortisol, estrogen and the oxytocin. The mammary gland differentiate during the pregnancy or secrete the milk after the childbirth. The newborn baby is fed the milk by the mother, that is the lactation, and during the initial few months of the growth. Thank you so much.